Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Love, Sweat, and Tears Ingredients for Transformative Campus Leadership. This episode is a big one. Buckle up. I'm talking to Chris Jones today. I just learned so much from him. This was such a great episode. I can't wait for you to dive in. Chris Jones started his career as an Army Ranger and then kind of discovered there his love for teaching and leading. And that took him into the classroom, eventually into AP and principal positions. And now he works with the Virginia affiliate of ASCD, equipping educators and leaders with the tools and resources they need to get the job done. He has some fantastic ideas. I can't wait for you to dive in. So without further ado, y'all please enjoy Chris Jones. Chris Jones, it's great to have you here with me. I'm so excited. I'm excited to get to know more about ASCD. I had never heard of that, despite being raised by educators and swimming in that soup for a long time, and then being here at RL. So I'm really excited to get introduced to what that does and what you can do for campus leaders. First, I want you to just tell me a little bit about yourself, like what you were like as a kid in school, and then how you've kind of found yourself where you are today.
Oh wow, Beth, you're asking me to take it back a long, long
Yes,
ways.
I love it. I love to hear what people's experience was like
Yeah,
as a student, because that informs the way that you interact with educators and campus leaders.
yeah. I mean, you're spot on, and just such a great connection to really what you're talking about. I'll say that in Virginia, it's super windy today too. It's. I mean, we're recording this February 16th, and it's 75 degrees today. I had to take out
Oh,
the short
wow.
sleeves. I mean, it's what is going on.
Man.
But anyways,
Yeah.
just first of all, it's a great honor. So thank you so much for reaching out and saying, hey, let's see what we can record together. So I appreciate it and thank you so much.
Of course.
For me, as a student, I would consider myself like I had pretty good intelligence. So there were some things that came easy to me, but I was also reluctant to do things that I didn't want to do, but was being told to do. I won't say that I was a defiant
Mm.
child because I was well behaved, but I didn't like
Mhm.
to read books that I was assigned to read. I preferred to read the books that I wanted to read, and at the time, I liked
Mhm.
to read about sports. So if I was allowed to choose what to read, I would read for hours. I'd get all the free
Mm.
pizza because you read certain amount of hours and you
Yeah,
get pizza. Like I
right.
was racking up the Pizza Hut
Yeah.
pizza hours. So
Yeah.
um, I had strengths in math and relatively in science until science started getting weird and doing other things that weren't math related. But when it came back, to physics, so math and
Mhm.
physics were where I felt strong, and I really didn't
Mm.
have I really didn't have direction or purpose um, ever. So I didn't
Mm.
know what I was going to do after I graduated. I really didn't have plans. Um, I ultimately ended up wanting to go to school to be an electrical engineer because that's what my uncle did. I just thought, well, he's good at math and science, and so am I. I'll follow in his footsteps. I got to Old Dominion University and I quit after 3 semesters because that is not what I wanted to do.
Yep.
I would say that the work ethic needed to match the intelligence required to do that, I didn't have at 18, 19 years old.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so that was kind of the academic path. I was fairly disengaged in
Mm.
school. I was very much interested in other things other than academics. I did have a
Mm.
friend group. I did like to party. Um, and I probably would have dropped out of high school
Mm.
if it weren't for music. I found that I had
Oh.
kind of a music talent. The first time I picked up a set of drumsticks to play on a drum set, I was really good, and I had no idea how I knew what to do.
Wow.
And so I hooked up with the music department and marching band my junior year. So the
Mm.
only reason I really went to school during my 11th and 12th grade years of high school was because I knew I got to go to music class every day. And
Wow.
so who knows what would have happened if I didn't find music in terms of my high school. a career. So there wasn't much that engaged me in
Mm.
school. There was no opportunity for me to develop a sense of purpose or to really
Mm.
um and being a teenager and saying the word plan is kind of oxymoronic, but
Sure.
at least having the opportunity to say, well, have you thought through what your purpose is so that you might find some things that you might want to do, what your interests are.
Mhm.
And so not having those really left me flailing. And
Mm.
I quit after 3 semesters. Number one, because I knew I didn't want to be an electrical engineer major, and I didn't know what else to do. And number two, um, I, I I I went to the movies. This was the summer of probably '97, and a movie called Con Air with Nicolas Cage came out. And
Yep.
in the movie, his character was an airborne ranger, and he was a badass. And when the movie ended, I said, and she was my girlfriend at the time, and she's my wife, Suzanne, now. She was my girlfriend at the time. We went
Oh.
to see the movie together.
Uh-huh.
And I said, that's what I want to do. And the very next morning, I went to the Army recruiter and I walked in. I said, I want to be an airborne
Wow.
ranger. And yes,
Wow.
yes. And I tell you what, I don't, it's crazy how things end up. But besides marrying my wife, joining the army was the absolute best decision that I could have made, because it did
Mm.
all the things that I was missing in terms of purpose, direction, discipline, um, you know,
Yeah.
um, just growing up. Um, just
Yeah.
it instilled all of those things. Belonging to and being responsible for somebody other than myself was something that I needed a huge shakeup. And so obviously hopefully we'll get into the rest of the story, but the rest of the story ultimately lands me to where I am sitting on a call with you, Beth, recording a podcast about leadership, about learning, and all of those things.
Yeah.
So, um, to save us from spending the entire hour and a half telling the full story, I'll stop right there and see if you got anything that you want to hit me with now.
Sure. So you're in the army. That ends at some point. How did you get into the classroom onto a
Yeah,
campus?
so I was super lucky. You're taken care of as an airborne ranger in the special ops community.
Mm.
Like I was stationed in Fort Benning in
So
Georgia.
you went
Oh yeah,
all the way
oh yeah,
into
oh
oh
yeah.
wow.
Well, there's an interesting story about getting.
I mean, how many people join the army wanting to do that and then
Yeah,
don't get there?
it's
Like that says
yeah,
something.
it's a
Yeah.
huge yes, to that point. I was very fortunate, and I worked for some really tremendous leaders um, who provided me opportunities to lead. And so as I came
Mm.
through, eventually as team leader, and then working with a squad, my platoon sergeant at the time, he pulled me over to the regimental side to do things like strategic planning and operational planning. And
Mm.
lo and behold, later on, and what is a different career, those would be very
Yeah.
important skills that I'd have to tap into. But when I got back from one tour in Afghanistan, when I returned, I had the opportunity to serve as an instructor for what was a leadership course. So we had a course that was 3 weeks in length. It was taught 11 times throughout the year, and I was an instructor for it. And
Mm.
like I found my genius. I found my purpose. I found my passion. Like I was naturally good at teaching. I was naturally good at instruction, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. Suzanne and I agreed that we wouldn't have children as long as I was in the military, because I couldn't. There's no way I wanted to
Mm.
be an airborne ranger and a dad at the same time. At least the dad that I
Sure.
wanted to be. And so
Yeah.
um, that's when it clicked for me. Like I have an out. I can go back to school. I can get a degree to learn how to be a high school math teacher. I love math and I love this thing called teaching. So let's put those two things together. So I separated from the military after 6 years, went back to school, got my and Columbus State University in Georgia, got a secondary ed math degree, moved back to Virginia to begin a teaching career
Mm.
that is still being written.
So how long were you a teacher before you stepped into a more administrative?
So classroom teacher 4 years. So I was a high school math teacher
Okay.
for 4 years. I was again put in a position where just great leaders gave me
Mm,
opportunities and tapped me on the shoulder or kind of
mhm,
guided me in directions. So I had a great principal, and then at the same exact time, I had some folks who were cheerleaders, who hey,
mm,
coming to observe, or I had the opportunity to be in a couple of different videos about teaching and learning. But I had this
mm.
opportunity where the division was starting a department, and it was going to be called the Center for Teacher Leadership. And it was professional development for teachers by teachers. And the idea is
Huh.
pull 10 teachers out of the classroom, form them in this center, and let them build professional development for teachers in the division. And there were
Wow.
3 high school.
Was this on your campus or
No,
in your
this is the
district?
big the district. It's in Virginia Beach, and so
Okay.
I think at the time
Okay.
we had right around 75,000 students. I know that's not big for by
Okay.
Texas standards because y'all have
Oh.
crazy big
Yeah.
districts.
Nothing is big by Texas standards. It's okay.
um, so I was one of those 10 teachers, and that was just a tremendous opportunity. It was really campus leadership without the
Mm.
like the administrivia. You know what I mean? So it was
Okay, yeah,
all instructional
sure.
leadership. It
Yes.
was all working with teachers. It was
Okay.
all working with professional learning communities and collaboration
Wow.
and building people's capacity to do the work. And oh my gosh, I got to do that for 2 years. And that was an amazing experience that really propelled me into the campus leadership role. So coming out of that, I got to
Yeah.
serve. I did 1 year as an assistant principal in an elementary school. And for a person that's like high school background,
Mhm.
I basically went to school like I was the father of 550 kids, and it
Yeah.
worked. They just a big dad
Yeah.
on campus. So that was, but it was a great opportunity that I had to take. The commute
Mm.
was just, it was killer. So 1 year was enough. I had to
Mm.
tap out with that commute, but I
Sure.
was able to land a position back in Virginia Beach at a high school, and then 4 years as an assistant principal with two fantastic leaders, and some great teachers that
Mm.
I got to work with, before I
Mm.
became a campus leader in another school division in Central Virginia.
Okay. Wow. I haven't ever heard of this kind of training program thing before. It's so fascinating to me. And I'd love to know a little bit like what it was like walking into campus and going from 2 years of kind of theory into the practical. I'm on a campus with tiny little kids. What was that like?
I think that's a great. I mean, so because I got to spend 2 years really honing my craft around instructional leadership, where I
Mhm.
could flex what I would consider the skills and the skill set and the strengths that I came with, whereas when I was in classrooms
Mhm.
observing teachers, working on
Mhm.
feedback in data teams, in grade level teams, like that's supposed to be
Yeah.
half the work. And it was the other half that it was crash course leadership. And so
Yeah.
things like discipline, or in an elementary school when it's the principal and the assistant principal and you're in charge of all of it,
Mhm.
the testing side of it, the
Mhm.
special education side of it,
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
the building, like making sure that the custodians are doing their job and the building is
Uh-huh.
functioning. Like all of that
Right.
was just this super steep learning curve that, quite frankly,
Mm.
never stopped. Even when I left my role as a principal and into my role now as executive director, so many different things to learn. Those were things that I feel like I mastered instructional leadership, because
Mm.
there are some very clear tenets
Sure.
of high quality instruction. But when it comes
Mm.
to uh, kids, and when it comes to
Mhm.
buildings, and when it comes to
Mhm.
operations, I mean, and the list can go on, you can never stop learning because things always are changing, especially when it comes
Mm.
to like our kids, and especially over the past 3 years, the rapidity of the change, the velocity, the acceleration of change for the
Yeah.
the world around our schools, in particular our kids, and how they're navigating that. Woo. There
Yeah.
a lot to learn there. So that's the side that is I don't want to call it like I don't want to call it a treadmill, but it's like you're
Mhm.
running and you're not really going anywhere, but I mean you're making a difference, but
Mhm.
there's just it just keeps coming
Yeah.
at you. So you have to
Yeah.
keep learning and growing and adapting.
Yeah, that was a question that I had for you. Or what kind of changes have you witnessed in your career and education? And then, what makes you hopeful? Like as you see these changes coming, do you feel just burdened by them? Is there a sense of like hope for the future? What do you feel like have been some big changes? We talk a lot about what the pandemic did for teachers and education. What are some things that come to mind specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I'm super hopeful about the future. I'm super optimistic.
Good. You should be.
Our
Yes.
our kids are amazing and our kids are resilient. For the past 3 years, we always like the kids are going to be fine. It's the adults who are struggling with this. I think some of it's now catching up a little bit when we talk about like our children's their mental health and their social stability, and their place in the world, and really finding out their cultural identities. So there's a little bit that has caught up with that. I think I think what the pandemic did was for a moment, because it has not lasted, and I know we can get on the trajectory, but for the moment, I think we suspended the things that were obviously trivial, that were the bulk of what we thought school was supposed to be about. You know what I mean? Like academics, 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 test scores, get them ready for college. And now it's like this whole human side, like, are they okay? Do they eat? You know, are like the basic necessities, the popular phrase became Maslow's before Bloom's. And it took a pandemic for us to realize that our children are humans first, students second. But that really helped us understand there was another like huge shift that I think I'd love to pick up the conversation, because the way that we thought about grades completely changed in terms of things like late work or missing assignments, like the shift to hey, can you figure out whether a kid knows that in one assignment as opposed to the six zeros that the kid now has in the grade book. And so as we shifted those things, that was a moment shift. Most of these things are the moment because we have reverted to some pre-pandemic behaviors, and I think once we get on stable footing, I do think we'll be able to hit that trajectory again. Another thing that shifted huge that wasn't it was always like one of those things, but it wasn't an important focus, was that family and community engagement part. Like we were all in this together type thing where parents had to take on the role of not just caregiver, but also like secondary education provider. So then it was all of a sudden like locking arms, like, okay, we've got to help this child read. What can I do while you're doing what you're doing? And this communication, two-way back and forth with the parents and with the families. So I think that was a huge shift. I think really taking a look at like our content area and our curriculum in general, like asking the questions, what can we cut back, what can we cut out, what can we consolidate, and then what's missing that we need to create. And so those aren't four questions that I made up. There were four questions from it's actually Heidi Hayes Jacobs, but it gave us the opportunity to say, like, look, we've known for a long time that our content is a mile wide and an inch deep. Let's go ahead and flip that, and let's get a very narrow set of standards and objectives and just go deep with them. And so, I think that's something that I think for a moment was a shift that I think right now, where everyone's screaming learning loss and NAEP score drops the highest that we've ever had, and et cetera, et cetera. Like now we're going back to this. Let's get it all in there and get it in there fast and catch all the kids up all at the same time. So I think those are just a couple of the shifts that I see, and I'm not even talking about ed tech. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even getting into ed tech, which was a whole nother ball of wax. But I think any chance that I get that where somebody asks me a question about the pandemic, it was I think inspiring is the word that I'm looking for, to see teachers and schools completely over one summer transform brick and mortar learning environments into virtual environments. And none of us knew what we were doing. We did the best we could and we burnt out on it because we never ever took the break. But to see human beings rally and take on the challenge and completely transform, um, I, I I I cannot underscore just how monumental that was, and just an amazing thing to do, to go to straight virtual when none of us had ever experienced anything like that.
Yeah, that was yeah. And I think that shows like how we can adapt and grow and change. And uh, I think sometimes we look at the monolith of education and how it's always been these certain things and feels like overwhelming, like there's no way we can just change it, like we're stuck with what we have, and so we just have to make the best of it. And that's such a great example of like, no, we actually can, if we have the right support
Yeah.
and systems in place. And rather than responding to crisis, kind of crafting that intentionally could really change things. And I feel like there's a desire for that. We just don't have that coming together. Like that's the piece that we're missing, is everyone coming together. And there was, some horrible things about the pandemic, but that sense of unity really drove us for a while, until it didn't.
Yeah.
That's a whole other can of worms, though. Um, so let's talk campus leadership skills. So you've talked a lot about your experience in leadership in the Army and how that translated to the classroom, and then more into campus leadership, and now you're with ASCD. And so you gave me this great analogy with eggs in an omelet versus eggs in an egg carton. So talk to me how you use that when we're talking leadership skills.
Yeah, I think uh, I think what we try to do is identify, um like, I don't want to say narrow, but it, like, here's skill one, here's skill two, and this is why I was thinking about the
Mm-hmm.
egg crate. But like, if there were 12 skills that school leaders and any leader, I will say this,
Mm-hmm.
needed to have, there,
Mm-hmm.
what is important is that those things kind of coalesce to form this thing called
Mm.
leadership. It's not like
Mhm.
communication. Here, I am going to take off my communication hat
Mhm.
and I'm going to build a shared vision. I'm going to take off my build a shared vision and I'm going to
Yeah.
get into data analysis and strategic planning. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
it's not like that. And so when we had kind of our conversation, when we talked about the egg carton or the egg crate versus the egg omelet, is that those dozen eggs, it's probably not appropriate to say you break the eggs, but I mean, you got to break eggs and make an omelet, but they
Yeah,
come
sure.
together to make the omelet. And yes, you're
Yeah.
going to add some peppers and some bacon and some cheese and spinach and all that. But it is a very different concept that your leadership is a culmination of the, the, the skills that are individually
Mhm.
identifiable. Like if you look at a school leader's evaluation, there are going to be standards, but guess what? Those standards
Mhm.
overlap and they build upon one another. So as a school leader, as a campus leader, the better you are at the development of the omelet as a result of the eggs that
Mhm.
feed into that omelet, the better off you'll be, because it's not like you're just taking hats on and off, and you're helping an entire community be
Mhm.
able to see very clearly how the pieces fit together. Did I
And
explain that
that's
right?
I think so. Yeah. And we teach leadership skills in
Yes.
isolation. This is how you budget. This is how you, instructional coach your teachers. This is how you handle, but sped, like it's all separate. And I'll hear administrators kind of like, oh, I really struggle with engaging my community. I really struggle with branding the school. I really struggle with these things. Um, and so shifting, I think that we need to make that shift of shifting from here are all the different leadership skills and they're all separate and I just focus on one at a time, thinking of them all together and how they impact each other. It feels kind of overwhelming. Like how like how do we do that? And I'd love to spend some time talking about specific leadership skills. Like, okay, if a principal feels like they need to improve their leadership skills, which ones are the ones that are going to bidirectionally influence each other the most, and how can they develop them together? How did you do that? Was it just having great leaders? What are campus leaders that don't have those mentors, how do they find that? How do they seek that out?
Yeah, that's that. And if we had the answer to that question, we can write a book, make $1 million, and keep it and go take the show on the road. I
Hmm.
think so. I will say this: many leaders who get to the position of campus leader, who become a principal of a
Hmm.
school, have inevitably
Hmm.
encountered leaders that they're taking away from, and so it might be
Hmm.
direct communication through experience and watching. It might be through direct
Hmm.
mentorship. I
Hmm.
refer to them as layers, and so each thing
Hmm.
that I do, whether it's an experience that I get,
Hmm.
an article I read, a book that I read, a course that I take, a degree that I
Hmm.
achieve, all become layers, and then the layers solidify to how you operate in terms of leadership based on
Hmm.
your values and kind of your
Hmm.
purpose. And so
Hmm.
I think number one is you have to be able to see it, experience it, read about it, whatever, and try it out. But I think if
Hmm.
we were to distill a couple things, and I gave this a little bit of thought, based on another conversation that I was having, and I like to do
Hmm.
things in threes. I like to count things,
Okay.
and sometimes it's three. Like if I were a new principal,
Hmm.
and like there were three things that I had to nail, like I've got to get
Sure.
these three
Yeah.
things right. I
Yeah.
would say number one is communication. Communication will
Mm.
be the most important thing for everything. It's
Mm.
with your staff, with your students, with your
Yeah.
families, with your community.
Yeah.
Open lines of communication that go two ways: transparent communication, clear communication, consistent communication. Like we have to nail
Yeah.
communication. So many great things happen with poor communication that
Mm.
it derails. You can have something
Mm.
derailed, but with great communication makes it okay because everybody knows what's going. All right,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't going the way we wanted it to, but here's what I'm communicating to you. Okay, well, we're all on the
Yeah.
same page. We all know what's going on. Okay, it's a
Yeah.
cluster, but at least we know what's going
Yeah.
on. Like there's a huge difference
Right.
there. So
Yeah.
I'd say nailing communication. There's nothing more empowering than I think information is a very powerful collateral entity. I don't know what I'm trying to think of there, but
Mhm.
when you share that information through communication, that is empowering to your
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think the other thing that that a campus leader would need to nail is the the operations, like the daily operations, um things like arrival, like when like the
Mm.
traffic pattern for parent drop off, like when I'm talking about like the
Mhm.
details of the day, every single day, from whatever, so from
Mhm.
7:30 to 2:30 or whatever time your school operates.
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
operations are clear and structured and run in a way that is as smooth as possible. Like if
Mhm.
if your people notice your operations, then your operations are
Mhm.
ineffective. It's when no one notices that things are going on is
Mm.
when you've reached the impact, because it's not the thing that people
Yeah.
notice and see and think about, because those things will get in the way.
Right.
Like the bells ringing at the
Yeah.
wrong time. Like everyone's expecting the bell
Yeah.
to ring at 10:55 and it rings at 10:52. Oh,
Right.
forget about it.
Yeah.
It's lights
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
making sure that people have their resource, like that kind of detail. Like you've got to nail the
Mhm.
operations, and with the
Mhm.
operations, the procedures. What do I do if? And then boom, just start listing all the
Yeah.
ifs and making sure that everyone knows what to do in different scenarios. So that would be two. And that's that we're not even talking about instruction here, right? Like
Right.
communication, you got to nail it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The flow from 7:30 to 2:30 has got to
Yeah.
be clear for everybody, because
Right.
nothing will fill up your inbox worse than if you
Yeah.
mess up the parent drop off line, if buses are
Yeah.
late to the whatever, if bells are ringing at the
Right.
wrong time, if there's no toilet paper in the stalls, like those basic operate,
Yeah.
like you got to nail those things.
Yeah.
And then I'd say the third thing is and this is the omelet part, is building a shared
Mhm.
vision. So taking a year
Mm.
to build out what a shared vision would be around high quality instruction, what a shared vision would be
Mm.
around the culture that your school desires, what a shared vision would be, to make sure that every child is, prepared for whatever's next, for prepared for anything.
Mhm.
And that's the omelet part. That's the part that, and we can dig
Mm.
into that if you'd like. But I think communication. Oh my gosh, communication. I mean, just think about your own experience. Like
Yeah.
when things have gone well or not well, that that is insignificant compared to the quality of
Mhm.
communication that you received within it.
Right. Yeah, especially as a parent with kids at a public school, if some crazy is happening all of the time, but if I know about it, then I feel like I can
Yeah.
trust my campus admin because they're going to be honest, they're going to be upfront, I'm going to know things like that, and especially in an era where we're having to market our schools against each other. I don't know if it's the same in Virginia, but here in Texas, parents are consistently choosing what schools their kids go to, and that's great. I love some parent choice, but that's put the burden on the principals to have to market their schools and tell parents why their kids should come to their school, and it's this whole other hat that we're having to wear. And if they have good communication, then they're trusted by their parents, and then we feel confident sending our kids
Yeah.
there. I'd rather have a principal I trust than one that's, really almost anything
Well,
else.
and I'm glad you brought up trust, because and that's the thing that I thought about when I thought about those two things, like communication and operations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Covey, one of his sons wrote The Speed of Trust,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
not the
Okay.
dad,
Okay. Okay.
wrote The
Okay.
Speed of Trust. And in the book, he says the quickest way to earn trust is through competence, and the quickest way to lose it is through character. And so people will
Mm.
trust you. And you just said it. If the line of
Yeah.
communication is open, that establishes a little bit of trust. But at the same time, if your operations are squared away, people will trust you because they see you as competent. Okay, well, the campus leader
Mm.
can rally his people to set up a squared away thing where I know exactly where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do. It runs smoothly. I'm not stuck 2 hours in the pickup line trying
Mm.
to, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that competence feeds into the trust, the transparency, the honesty, and the part of
Mm-hmm.
that is the integrity, like doing the things that you say
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do. All of those things coalesce to build trust, and the trust can take you very, very far, especially as a
Mm-hmm.
campus leader. But it's also a self marketing tool that doesn't fit under the marketing bucket. You know what I'm saying? Because your
Yeah.
social media presence will not market your school greater than how your parents talk about you and your school.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to the three kind of buckets that you were talking about. Um, how communication, great. Let's communicate effectively. How? Like, what are some ways that you're communicating effectively, and how do we improve effective communication?
Yeah, I think you have to have, the most important part of communication is listening. I think
Mm,
being able to take time as a new campus leader to really get to know your people and ask some very pointed questions. What are we doing well that we need to keep
yeah.
doing? What are we doing that's not so good that we need to stop doing? And what's out there that you would like to see us start doing? I call it the keep, stop, start. So if you just ask those
Yeah.
three questions of everyone you come into contact, all of your teachers, all of your staff members, all of your students, your student groups, all of your parents, just ask that question and gather that data. that's helping to
Mm,
formulate that third bucket of building a shared vision. But it
yeah.
within those conversations, number one, you're showing that you're listening, especially when action
Mhm.
reflects those conversations. There's no greater build of that. But through
Yeah.
that listening, there will be a clear pathway of what communication has been and what they'd like to see it to be. And so having a very
Mhm.
clear structure for that conversation, I'm sorry, for that communication is extremely important. Like a weekly newsletter for your staff that gives them a week in
Mhm.
advance at a glance so they know
Mhm.
what to expect. And so
Yeah.
one thing that I used to share with my team is that um, is that if we are one day behind, that's a week behind for teachers. Like we can't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh my
Mm.
gosh, we did not communicate this. We need teachers to do X." We're done. We're done because teachers have
Yeah.
way too much on their plates to respond to our ineptitudes. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
having that that for me the structure of the staff newsletter would go out on the Thursday and contain all the information you need for the following week. And so if somebody needed to
Okay.
communicate something to the staff, and I did away with all staff emails, like that was one of my things, like no longer are we sending all staff
Mm.
emails. Like if you get an all staff email, it will come from me and it will either be the newsletter
Mm.
or will be something that was too important that it couldn't wait for the newsletter. So if you
Okay.
don't get it to me by the time that newsletter gets out, then you've got to find the
Mhm.
individuals who you need to communicate it with. Just, I mean,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we need to think that far in advance. So
Yeah.
having a clear and consistent, and I used oh gosh, S'more. The newsletter, it's
Okay.
just an online, they give you an education discount. It was great. But anyways, a S'more
Cool.
newsletter went out once a week to the staff, eliminating the all staff emails because there's nothing worse for a teacher than an email getting filled up with stuff that really doesn't pertain to
Right.
them, and then trying to
Yeah.
sift through, is this for me or is this not? What is it telling me to do? I think in
Mhm.
that newsletter, being very clear what's information and what is an action item, and then to also repeat
Mm.
information and let them know this is a repeat or this is a repost from something else that you saw previously, but it's important. I don't want it to fall off your radar. I think
Mhm.
having all of your meeting dates on the calendar prior to the start of the school year is a huge, that's not just a communication tool, that's a huge planning tool. That way folks know, all right, on these days we have staff meetings, and so I that's where I need to be. I can mark it on my
Yeah.
calendar.
Right.
Same thing for families and communities. I started out doing one a month, but when the pandemic hit and it became like one a day, uh,
Mm.
I eventually slowed it down to one a week. And so so Sunday at 3 o'clock, and I picked Sunday at 3 o'clock because most
Mhm.
folks were done with church by that time.
Sure.
If it was
Yeah.
a good NFL game, I was cutting in my phone call and my email where there was still
Yep.
time in the fourth quarter, so
Yeah.
on and so
Yeah.
forth. So having, and it was the same type of thing, but it was sharing information, just keeping the line of
Mhm.
communication open, with like letting them know when we were doing a fire drill or if something happened at school.
Mhm.
I wanted the parents, for example, to hear, this is another example, to hear it from me before they heard it from their child. So I would, like, my job was to
Mm.
communicate out, and so I'd get up, boom, hey parents, just want you to know that the fire alarm went off, we had to evacuate the building, everyone's safe, it was a tripped whatever, blah blah blah, we're moving back into
Mhm.
the school now to resume instructional activities. Like, boom, the parents
Mhm.
appreciate things like that. Hey,
Yeah.
bus 816
Yeah.
was in an accident. I just want you to know that no one's hurt. We've got them safe on camp. Like,
Yeah.
just keeping that line of communication open. I think
Yeah.
those are two things. So that I probably just listed a couple more than that. I think the use of social media, I don't think
Mm.
is harnessed enough in schools, and recognizing
Mhm.
where the people are on the platform. So like professionals are on Twitter,
Mhm.
the kids are on Instagram and TikTok,
Mhm.
and the adults are on Facebook.
Mhm.
Now, with each year that passes, less and less are on Facebook and more are on
Yeah.
Instagram because our parents are
Yeah.
getting younger. Isn't that that's
Yeah.
depressing, right? As we get older, our parents are getting younger. Like, how's that?
Hey, I'm a young parent. Don't. I'm not
No,
depressing.
I know, and my guess is you might be on Facebook and Instagram, and so So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I'm a school and I've got a Twitter and Instagram and a Facebook and I'm constantly, posting, if I'm
Mhm.
constantly posting, I'm giving people a reason to be there. And I used four tenets. Like
Yeah.
so the things that we used social media for were to
Mhm.
inform, to promote, to celebrate, and to inspire. And so every single
Ooh,
day there was at least one of these four things going out. 365
okay.
days a year, even on holidays.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was crucial. I also ran once a month. I would do a Facebook Live at 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening for the community. So I would just
Mm.
get on Facebook Live. Sometimes I'd have an update to share
Wow.
information. Most of the times I just got on
Sure.
there for like a town hall. Like, what are your questions? Drop them in the chat. What can I
Yeah.
do? And I they almost all of them lasted an hour because great interaction. And
Wow.
and then I'd also archive it so it would be on our Facebook feed. And so folks
Yeah.
who couldn't be live with me could still go back and see what was asked, what was said. I'm
Mhm.
trying to think of some other things, but I think that
You're
consistency,
giving us some great ones.
that
Yeah.
consistency with the structured format that folks can
Mhm.
can uh I want to say predict. Like if you change
Mhm.
your format of communication, then folks are trying to navigate that as opposed to navigating the content. Like I want you to focus on the content. So the structure
Yeah.
is going to look the same exact every time. So you know exactly what to expect, where these things are going to be located. So hopefully those are a couple of tactics that I use that, and I would consider that communication was one of the things that I was able to improve over time, and I'm still
Yeah.
working on it. My communication is not
Sure.
perfect, and if you have
Right.
perfect community, I don't know who you are, uh,
That doesn't
but
exist. Yeah.
yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And I want to talk some while we have time about the building a shared vision and the campus culture and the I like the way that you say building a shared vision because that goes it's within the campus and without like it's the community and the teachers and the staff it encompasses everything. So how does a new campus leader do that? Or I'm thinking especially of those campus leaders that come into a new school that maybe had horrible administration in the past or that are struggling that has the vision is broken and the morale is low. How do we do that?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question too. So that's $2 million we're about to earn, right? If we can figure this out, then here we go. No,
Okay, what are some things we can do to make that
yeah,
better?
yeah. No, I think so. So I gave you one off the jump, and that's really like one-on-one interviews, and you don't need more than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask to keep, stop, and to start, and you can do that through
Mhm.
survey as well. And so one-on-one interviews and take notes.
Mm.
Um, that way you can come back
Mm.
to those things. So one-on-one interviews,
Yeah.
like focus groups, like for example, as you're doing your one-on-one interviews with the other
Mhm.
administrators, with the key staff, like your
Mhm.
office manager, who's really the one who runs the school.
Mhm.
You got to make
Yep.
sure, like your custodian, who knows everything that's going on,
Yeah.
your teachers, and even the union rep that represents your school, and the other leaders, like the department chairs or the grade level chairs.
Mhm.
You want to get
Mhm.
those one on ones, and then through the rest of the staff. At the same time, you can pull student groups in, like your student council and your
Mm.
student government association executive
Mhm.
council. You can bring in certain clubs. You can bring in the captains from the sports teams and just put them around a table and
Mm.
ask them the same exact three questions: keep, stop, and start, and
Yeah.
take notes so you can get that. Bringing parents not just to school to have like open forum and functions. I went to
Mhm.
I think it was 8 or 9, like into the community, whether it was the
Mm.
learning cottage at the trailer park, whether it was
Mhm.
like the pool house at the community association pool. Like I went, so
Mhm.
go to the people, and guess what? Ask the same exact.
Mm.
They'll look at you like, oh, like they're expecting you to share something. Like, no,
Sure.
I'm here. Here are the
Yeah.
things that I believe, but I think how we're going to
Yeah.
build this together. These are the things that I need to know. And so I think
Mhm.
that, and then doing those exact same questions out through surveys. So folks who you might not be, because
Mhm.
you might not be able to interview them all, be able
Sure,
to get
right.
that through survey, and then spend a year really either going to different schools that you
Mm,
know, okay, these are schools that are doing some really cool things, whether that's with instruction or culture or
mm,
innovation, like what's in your head
mhm,
and what you're hearing in those interviews and focus groups and survey data.
mhm,
Okay, this is what the people want. Let's go show them what it looks like. Let me take a group of teachers over here, or let me take another
yeah,
group of teachers to this school over here. So doing site visits is what we call them. Sharing resources
mhm,
like articles or videos, or even doing or even doing book studies with some leadership
mhm,
teams. So infusing the things that you believe about the school that you want to create that is also
mhm,
overlapping with what the people are telling you. And once you find that sweet spot, you hit them with all of those things: the resources, the articles, the videos, the books, the site visits, um going to like sending your people to conferences and professional development workshops, et cetera, et cetera. You're just building their capacity while you're also building out this shared vision, and then coming back to it and really mapping it out so that it can be a clear and
mhm.
coherent North Star, so that everything you
Yeah.
do, I like to think of Velcro. It becomes one half of the Velcro. Like if it's something
Mm,
that we want to do that sticks, we're going to do it. If it just bounces off because it's not in line with our shared vision, then we're not going to do that.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So building that out and doing it in a way that is co-constructing, and I think that's the important thing, is that a shared vision is
Mm,
co-constructed. It's not done through manipulation. You know what I mean? Like I know what we're gonna
mhm,
do. I'm just gonna put you in a
mhm,
position where you can say the things or do the things that I want you to do. Like
mhm.
that's not leadership. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think as you build that out, you also have to have a very clear idea of what it's going to take to make that happen, not
Mhm,
just strategically, but also the courage, because every school that you can imagine in your head is going to take a whole lot of work.
mm.
No matter where that school is going to take a
Yeah.
lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. And if you are not ready for that, and if you don't prepare your people for that, then you might not ever see that vision realized. And
Mhm.
so I'm going to stop there, because I think that's really what, like, how do you actually build out a shared vision? Hopefully, I gave kind of like step one, step two, step three,
Yeah, for
to do that.
sure.
But then I think um, we could just talk about it now. I think what else is important is how a campus leader structures their leadership and governance. Now, that's not something that is often talked
Mm.
about. It's not in like master's level courses. It's not like
Mhm.
you have to think about your hierarchy. You know what I mean? Like when somebody thinks
Yeah.
about a leadership structure, you typically think about, all right, there's a
Yeah.
person at the top, and they've got some underlings, and then the
Mhm.
otherlings have underlings, and then
Mhm.
there's just kind of this
Mhm. Yep.
this
Yep.
tiered. But I think
Mhm.
in a in a in a school that is moving effectively through a shared leadership,
Mhm.
like a shared vision, shared leadership, co-construct, like all this, like shared leadership,
Mhm.
how you structure is a direct reflection of that vision. And so the school you want to create,
Mm.
there has to be a leadership structure that aligns to that. And what I mean by that is, yes, you have a
Mm.
core leadership team, your administrative team, your instructional
Mhm.
leadership team. But based on what that shared vision that you're co-constructing is, there have to be teams and committees that are focused on those things. And so somebody who's dedicated to think
Mm.
about innovation, somebody who's dedicated to think about our school culture, somebody who's dedicated to thinking about how we're going to celebrate and appreciate, somebody who's dedicated to thinking about
Mhm.
um, our operations. And I could go
Mhm.
on and on, but I think something that is often overlooked, that deserves astute attention, is how you structure leadership
Mhm.
and governance, because how that is structured will determine how you lead, and where things will go. Because if it's important,
Mhm.
then you need to have somebody with eyes on, and if you don't have somebody designated with eyes on, then it's never going to be seen.
Mhm. What are tools that you have used to identify those people, those leaders that are helping you?
I think I think part of it is, number one, those things come out in those one-on-one interviews. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like, I mean, yes, you're
Yeah.
asking the keep, stop, start, but you're also having a conversation because you're a human being. Like, what are
Right.
you
What are
into? What are your
what are your
passions? Tell me about
ambitions? What are
your
your
life. Yes,
goals?
yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to take notes, because then you're starting to formulate your teams based on, hey, when we had a
Mhm.
conversation, you said you were interested in learning more about personalized learning. Well, we're going to form a
Mhm.
small group who's going to really start looking into this. We're going to go to this school over here. We're going to
Mhm.
do this book study. I'd love for you to help me co-facilitate and co-lead that team. Boom. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, because the person's the
Yeah.
one who said, this is what I'm interested in. This is
Right.
what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's that. I think there's also a need to have open calls so that everyone has if I would have known that that's what was going to happen, I would have said that in my one-on-one interview. You know what I mean? So you give the
Mhm.
open call.
Yeah,
Hey,
right,
we're
sure.
forming a principals advisory council who's going to be responsible for really talking about the functionality of our school. I'm looking for two
Mhm.
representatives from each grade level. If you're interested, please fill out this form. And then bam, the next thing you know,
Mhm.
the people who wanted to be a part of it are a part of that. And you might
Mhm.
also have to, based on your um, how you get to meet folks and interact, and based on some other
Mhm.
recommendations, you're going to pull some
Mhm.
folks along with you too. I think it's also at that same time, it's also important to build upon the existing leadership, because you're
Mm.
when a new school leader arrives, there's something in place, and you can't
Yeah.
just completely dismantle that
Right.
and keep going, because
Right.
there will be no shared
Yeah.
vision. So you have
Yeah.
to build
Yeah.
upon, like, who are the leaders in this school,
Mhm.
designated and informal, and you tap
Mhm.
into them.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, that's great. We have a little bit of time left, and I want to hear more about ASCD, about specifically what you're doing and why you're excited about it. But some of the history and too, and how ASCD has been working in Virginia, and why someone should become a member, and what ASCD can do for leaders in education.
Oh, I love this question. Absolutely over the moon excited about VASCD and our work to support our membership and all educators throughout the Commonwealth.
Hmm.
So I mean, we consider ourselves the premier entity in Virginia for teaching and learning. And so all the things that
Okay.
come with that: curriculum, instruction, assessment, relationships with kids, personalization, deeper learning. I mean, I could go on and on about what kind of we're leaning into, but we really do it through three buckets.
Hmm.
One is our
Okay.
programs, the things that we deliver on that help build the capacity through professional learning. One is through
Mm.
service, our way to give back to the profession. So we do awards, we publish free content, including a
Mm.
journal. We have a podcast channel, we have a YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Channel. We've created some micro credential. I mean, I'm sorry, some modular based courses, and part of our programming is micro credentials, which is a whole, like, it's almost
Hmm.
its own bucket, but it's also right now
Yeah.
we carve that under programs, including our big conference. And then the third bucket, so programs, services, and our third bucket is through advocacy. So work with policy, work with
Mm.
regulations, work with legislation, really
Hmm.
looking to influence the external things that put pressure on
Hmm.
classrooms. We feel like the more that we can influence
Mm.
that, the better we can divert it in productive ways that get towards that
Yeah.
goal of deeper learning and a deeper sense of purpose for our kids in their learning. So there are a lot of things that we do within those three buckets that are
Hmm.
extremely beneficial. But the one thing that I would say is, important about becoming a member, important about coming to our events and engaging in our content, and
Hmm.
is the network, because the ASCD
Mm.
is, we call ourselves your learning network. And so it the connections that you create, they become personal friendships just as much as they become
Mhm.
professional networks. But
Mhm.
what we found is, especially in 2023, is that almost all of us are after the same goal, and almost all of us are facing
Mhm.
similar challenges. And there's no reason for
Mm.
any one person or any one group of people to do it by themselves when we're all
Mhm.
flailing about trying to find our way. So being able to
Yeah.
connect, learn from each other, see what things are working, and share them from the mountaintops, and just yeah, and enjoy each other's friendship. So I think that's probably the shortest amount of time that I've ever explained what we do. And so I hope that gives you and our listeners a good understanding of for the Virginia side of it, and then ASCD as the
Mhm.
international organization, we call it the mothership.
Mhm.
Um, that
Mhm.
on an international scale is fantastic.
So tell me, I'm interested about those networks. Like, how do people network and build community within ASCD?
So there's a bunch of different ways. So
Okay.
when you come to an event, a
Mhm.
program, 99 times out of 100, it is not going to be sit and get for a couple of hours where you never ever
Okay.
interact with
That's
somebody else.
nice.
So
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
collaborative time and built-in
Okay.
collaboration in the things that we do with the programs. We do structured
Mm.
luncheons when we have them, and so that there's ways for
Mhm.
you to meet new people because we
Mm.
put a focus on the network. There's always exchanging of contact
Mhm.
information. We have a pretty
Mm.
decent following on Twitter, and part of that we used to run, and maybe I need to bring this back. I just I can only do so
Mm.
much.
Sure.
We used to do live chats, and that used to be a pretty popular way for folks to connect with one another. We have different ways to
Mm.
share. So we do what are called innovation forums where we set up
Okay.
site visits where, like, let's say that your school is doing something awesome and you want to showcase it. We'll put it up as an
Mm.
innovation forum, and hey, the first 30 are going to be able to come in and we're going to spend a day in your school, and we'll run that and
Wow.
structure that and facilitate. The
Yeah.
pandemic put a pause on that, and once we're ready to get back to it, I'll be excited.
Yeah.
But we've
Yeah.
we've replaced that with a spotlight series. So we do it on
Okay.
our YouTube channel. Right now, we've got, I think, two teachers in there, so two classrooms. We've got two schools and a school division, but
Mm.
where and it's just me, so it's not like this huge film crew.
Mhm.
We'll go in, we'll do
Mhm. Yeah.
interviews, we'll film what it looks like
Mm.
in the classroom, the things that they're talking about in their interviews,
Mhm.
and then we'll put it together and package it as a short documentary so that folks can see
Mm.
some exemplars of what's going on throughout the Commonwealth
Yeah.
and say, "Oh, wow, I really like what Western Branch Middle School is doing. I'm going to reach out to that school
Yeah.
and see if I can connect with them." And so we try to set folks up
Yeah.
in a situation where it's not just like network, like, "Oh, let's find our common ground." Like, no, we're going to give you the common ground, and
Right.
then you can flock towards that. There's one structure I learned from, and I don't even remember where I learned it from. Birds of a feather. So, like,
Mhm.
if you're working
Mhm.
on something or if you're interested in something, you all come to
Mhm.
one spot,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
work through that.
Cool. That sounds awesome. Are most of your members like administrators? Are they mostly teachers? Like, who are the people that can benefit from
Yeah,
ASCD?
so we tout that we serve all roles, all levels, and all areas of Virginia,
Okay.
and when you look at the bulk of our membership, now we have
Mhm.
superintendents, we have some
Mhm.
students, actually, we have some counselors, we have some higher ed, professors and folks who work
Mm.
in higher
Mhm.
ed. The bulk, though, if you were to spread it out, about half is
Mhm.
in a support role. So that's like essential support, like
Okay.
supervisor,
Mhm.
curriculum specialist,
Mhm. Yep.
coordinator, director,
Mhm.
in that role, or at the school-based level, so like instructional coach or reading specialist. So not
Mhm.
directly impacting kids in the classroom, but a support role for teachers. So about half in that role,
Yeah.
about 25% at the school leader role, so principals, assistant principals, deans, etc.,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
25% are classroom teachers. So we've got almost
Okay.
2,000. About 500 are in that support role. About 250 are school leaders, and about 250 teachers. I think
Wow.
where we're starting to lean more and more into teaching and learning and classroom
Mhm.
um, direct support, we are gaining like more and more teachers. Like, one of the things that we do is we offer
Mm.
every new teacher in the state, we offer one free year of membership, just to kind of get them
Wow.
acquainted with VASC, to get some resources thrown in their way.
Yeah.
It's not a marketing tool where we hope that, okay, did you like what you did? Now
Sure,
keep
right.
coming back. It's not that. It's just
Yeah,
that
right.
it is so tough to be a new teacher, especially right now.
Mhm.
One of our ways to give back is to offer them up a free year of membership.
Mm. That's so cool. If people are hearing this and they're interested, there's people outside of Virginia. How can they find more information or attend an event or become a member?
If you could just remember the initials, VASCD,
Google
that's
it.
it. VASCD.org.
Yeah.
That's our website. VASCD is
Yeah.
our handle
Okay.
on Instagram and Facebook. And everything that you need is within there. Whether you're interested in becoming a member, you want to subscribe to our newsletter. We do
Mm-hmm.
policy updates. You can subscribe to that to get the latest on legislation
Mm-hmm.
and other things going around with that. There's just so many. Yes. So if you just go to vascd.org, the rest will take care of itself.
Awesome. Before we end our time together, I'd really like to just kind of ask the question. We have campus leaders that listen to this. What would you like to tell them directly?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say
Mm,
the first thing I would say is thank you. Thank you for choosing to serve and
mm,
thank you for choosing to stay. When it is
yeah.
very tough, like there's never been a more difficult time, and here you are, and sometimes it feels
Mm,
lonely, like you're on an island
yeah.
all there by yourself. Just know that there are thousands of you who feel like that, and if you can
Mm,
find a way to connect with others, do so. Keep your head
mm,
up and keep one foot in front of the other. Do what's in your heart, and you build that capacity of your people to help you do the work, because it gets heavy when you try to carry it on your own. And I know it feels like you are sometimes. So stay strong, take care of yourself, keep your head up, one foot in front of the other. You've got this. I know it's tough, but you've
mm.
got this.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for everything, for this chat, for building courses with responsive learning and getting this kind of integral information into the hands of people that might not be able to sit down and talk with you. It was so fun getting to hear about your stories, and thank you so much for all of those specific practical tools that you laid out. I love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Did I tell you or did I tell you? I mean, what a fantastic conversation. Always love the blend of story and theory and the why we do what we do with the practical, implementable, step by step instruction to let you know how to do things. It was such a great conversation, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, you can find links to all of the resources that he mentioned in our show notes. This whole production is made possible by Erwin Solbach, who also did the music that you're listening to right now. Our logo and design is from Alana Kanoy, and this whole production is labor of love from the folks at Responsive Learning. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.